All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with our first media availability today here at Martinsville Speedway. In advance of the STB 500 race, we're now joined by Chase Elliott, driver of the number 9 Napa Auto Parts Chevrolet. Chase, you've had a pretty close, almost winning here. What are your emotions going into the race?
Yeah, we've had our last 2 races here have been much improved over the first couple, and we're not real sure why that has been, but it's been a better track for me. That this has been one of my worst places and one of the places that I've, I personally feel like I've struggled at a lot. So to have a couple good runs here the past 2 races has been nice, encouraging. Had a car good enough to compete for a win here last time. We were close this race last year, but definitely better in the fall. So learned some things, and my emotions are just excited and looking forward to the weekend and an opportunity to go and try to compete for a win.
Perfect. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and open it up to questions. Raise your hand. We'll get a mic to you. We'll start here in the back.
With Easter being next weekend, do you have any plans? And looking forward to Texas, kind of what's your thoughts about going there second year with the repave?
Yeah, gonna go and take a trip with some friends next weekend, so I'm looking forward to that. It's always nice to be able to go and get away a little bit, so I'm going to enjoy it. And as far as Texas goes, we actually got the test there in January, I guess, so we didn't have a very good test. I didn't feel like in January, but a lot's changed since then, and we've got a chance to bring our cars back from the West Coast and work on some things, so I hope that's going to help our cause there, and we can try to get rolling.
And go here in the front.
Mike Embry, USA Today. What's your perspective on why so many drivers have trouble getting tuned into this track? Even some of the all-time greats didn't win here. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, if I had won a race here, I would feel better about having an answer, but. This place is just so, for me, I can't speak for other guys, but, I did a lot of short track racing kind of coming up, trying to make it here, and still enjoyed short track racing, but this place is just not at all anything like any short track that I raced at. Now, there are guys that race short tracks at different parts of the country that had places like this, but we just didn't, the Montgomerys of the world and the Gresham, the old Peach State racetrack, Lanier, Pensacola, Opp, Alabama, all those places that we raced at a lot were just nothing like this. To me, they drive more like the mile and a halves do and the wore out mile and a halves. So it's just a different animal, having the corners be so tight. It's a very finesse racetrack. You really have to find a rhythm here and be able to repeat that rhythm to the within a few inches every lap, I feel like, to really make the difference. So it's just different, and I don't know if that's the same for other guys, but I think that's been my struggle point, is kind of everything that I've learned short track racing and the habits that I've kind of taught myself and the ways I've been stuck in just do not apply here, which is very, very, very hard to get yourself out of those habits.
John Haverland with ESPN Albuquerque. Chase, obviously you ran super well here last year, and obviously Jimmie's been very successful here as well. Entering this weekend, have William and Alex looked to both of you guys, in terms of, advice, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I probably more Jimmie than me. I can barely help myself here, so I think they should definitely lean on him. And his success here has been very consistent over a long period of time. So I would, if they come to me, I'm pointing them to him.
Okay, we're going to take a question from the back, make our way to the front.
Aaron McFarling with the Roanoke Times. Chase, I know you said frequently that the near misses that you think about the most are the ones where you had more control as a driver. But obviously the scene that unfolded in October here, how much have you thought about that and what it would have meant to finish the way it looked like it was going to finish, and your thoughts now having some time to reflect on what happened?
Yeah, I mean the coulda woulda game, doesn't really matter. I mean there was a lot that was laying on that race. It wasn't just a win; it was a chance to get a race for a championship. So that was obviously had a lot of implications. But I mean, it doesn't matter. It didn't happen. I can't turn back time. So we all kind of know the implications and the things that could have been, but they weren't. So no point in really getting caught up in it too much.
I'm going to go here to Jeff.
Jeff Gluck from jeffgluck.com. Along those lines, it's been everywhere this week. It's all over Twitter and it's in commercials. It seems like every time you see that, because I'm sure it's unavoidable for you, like what does it bring back the memories? You cringe? You just say like, nah. Like what's your reaction every time you see it? My
reaction is everybo's got to try to write a story, right? So it's been a long time ago. Last October to now has been a good while back, and like I said a second ago, I can't do anything about it. So for me, when I think about that night, I try to make myself think about the characteristics and things that our car was doing that made us good, and just try to run laps in my head and try to, I remember a lot, of that night, and when your cars are good, a lot of times I feel like you remember certain things about them, and you just try to think back on the small things that were making the difference, that were allowing us to have the performance we had, and something for me to think about, to try to apply this morning, and hope that we can get our car driving like that. And if we can, hopefully we'll have more opportunities and be in that position.
We go here in the second row.
Mark Garrow, PRN. Chase, with what happened last fall and subsequently at Phoenix, is it something that a driver eventually has to draw a line in the sand two ways? Number one, I am willing to move a guy to win if I have to, and if somebody strays over the line too far, then I have to take action. Do you feel like there was a message sent in this race and at Phoenix that every driver has to eventually send?
I guess so. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think you race people how they how they race you, and I mean that there's there's a difference in moving a guy out of the way and them being able to move on and finish, and them not. So I think that's a tough thing, and it's to be honest with you, it's very difficult to move guys out of the way. It's easy to make a mistake and to wreck them. I'm probably not good enough to move them out of the way and not wreck them. So for me, I just better figure out a way to pass them. Without touching them would probably be the best option. But there are going to come times where you're going to be racing hard and you're going to touch and you're going to move guys and people aren't going to be happy, and that's part of it. But yeah, there's definitely, you got to draw a line somewhere, or like I've said before, you're going to get taken advantage of. So that applies anywhere in life.
Do you feel like you get more respect now on the racetrack, a little bit more now that people kind of understand where you're willing to call it?
I mean, to be honest with you, I haven't really had a whole lot of issues with a lot of people. I try to show respect to guys that show me respect, and I think there's been a very mutual understanding there. So there's a lot of guys I enjoy racing with. There's some guys that don't enjoy racing with me, which is fine. That's their opinion. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. So, I think it all kind of makes the world go around. So, yeah.
We'll go here.
Brian Nelson with Motor Racing Network. So it's been kind of a mixed bag for not just the 9 team, but all of HMS so far in the year. But you've had some big tracks to establish the program with Vegas, Atlanta, and then last week. How do you sum up and assess where you as you and the 9 team are, and then HMS as a whole?
Well, I mean, I think we're obviously not where we want to be. First and foremost, I'm not going to lie about it and say that I think everything's perfect. It's never perfect, but I think Phoenix was a good race for us. Jimmie ran pretty well at Fontana, so I feel like there's been some light here and there. We just got to figure out what it takes for all of us to have that success, or for all of us to be solid and to do it on a consistent basis. So I've been very pleased with our team. I think that we've been, last week was not a very good run at all. I wouldn't consider last week this being the case, but I think the other races we've made the most of what we had, and the execution of our races have been pretty good, I feel like, for the most part. Obviously didn't finish a couple, wrecking at Daytona, wrecking at Vegas, but we were fast at both of those places, or, better. Vegas, I don't think we had anything for the guys to win, but, we could run midway through the top 10, so I'm not deflated personally. I think that our team and myself and Alan have a very similar mindset with where things are at, and we're just trying to make the most of what you can week in and week out. And I think that, I know that he can build a race car and come to the racetrack that is capable of winning, and I think that he believes in me enough to know that I can come and compete with guys to win races. And I think as long as that trust is there, then the rest of it, it may take time, or it may not, but I think as long as that understanding is there, it'll all work out.
We'll go here.
Hey, Chase, Al Pierce from Auto Week. A question not about last fall,
Man,
and not about
nice
your
job.
team, and not about you.
My man.
You've been racing against and with Jimmie Johnson 4 years now.
Yeah.
More so than his other teammates. Do you see any difference in the way he's driving a race car now? Is he more hesitant, more cautious, less aggressive? Because he's in the middle of the worst slump easily of his career. Is he a different driver now than he was 2 years ago?
I'd like to have his slump. I don't know about everybody else, but man, no. Look, everybody gives, tries to ride on the age thing, and that is just so not true. You don't forget how to drive. You don't change your driving habits. You don't just do all that in the course of a couple years. I mean, the guy is still one of, if not the greatest driver ever to ever come through NASCAR. I would probably say the best ever, without question. So I just, to make accusations that he's not as good as he once was is just simply not true for anybody. I'm not saying you are, but for anyone to think that is not the case. I can assure you, if the man has a car that's capable of going to run well and to run inside the top 5 and lead laps and dominate races, he's probably going to be doing that. So I expect him to get back to that dominance that he's had. If he has the cars and opportunities to do that, I definitely think he will. So no, I don't see any difference, really with him.
Okay, we're going here. We're going in the back.
Hey, Chase, Joe Thomas, WCHV in Charlottesville. 2 back-to-back on the slump, but also generally HMS this year. How much of that has to do with the new aero of the Camaro? How much is important for having experienced crew chiefs? And does a track like this eliminate that, where aero isn't such a big deal? Cars run up front without grills on them.
Yeah. Aero, as much as you wouldn't think it matters here, I think it matters everywhere. It just matters a lot less here. So, I think you can take, you can take some damage and things and still run good with it here. So I think you can get away with maybe less, this or that from the aero side. A lot of guys do sacrifice downforce in their cars and things for, low light and left weight, and trying to keep everything, the center of gravity low. That is an option that you kind of have coming here. You can take the downforce option, which not many people do because we're going slow and whatnot. So it's kind of short track racing 101 when it comes to that. I feel like that most guys take their cars and do. So I do think that, us having a new body this year has taken some time and has been taking some getting used to and some development, and it's a big change. And doesn't necessarily look like it from TV, but all your aero maps and all of your numbers that you've been crunching for years, all that stuff's different. And it's not fair to run 4 or 5 races, whatever we've run, and put a label on us yet. So I think we've seen it before. People have manufacturer changes, or not manufacturer changes, but body changes within their manufacturer, and it takes some time to develop that stuff. So I do think that it could be related to that, but I think that it takes time.
All right, we'll finish with Dustin in the front.
I had a couple questions. Dustin Long, NBC Sports. In talking about Jimmie, you mentioned one of the greatest, and then you kind of said, I'd say the best ever, without question. One of the great things about sports is the ability to debate different things. So I'm sure there would be some Richard Petty or Dale Earnhardt fans that would debate you. Can you explain a little bit further, first off, why you would rate Jimmie, or what do you see out of Jimmie more so if you were explaining it to a Dale Earnhardt or a Richard Petty fan?
Yeah, I mean, I think just and I think there's a lot of things that factor in, but one thing I look at is winning 5 championships in a row is pretty impressive in my opinion, and now he's walked in the room, so the pressure's on. But I think it's just an opinion, and I have my opinion on that, and I just don't see those other guys in the same situation. I just and I'm not taking anything away from them, all legends of the sport, right? But I just don't see anybody competing with what he's done in the short amount of time he's been here.
I also wanted to ask you about your reaction last fall at the end of the race. I understand that's all in the heat of the moment, but I guess my question would be, would you have felt as comfortable doing something like that 6 months earlier, a year earlier? I think as you've kind of grown and developed, as a rookie develops, they kind of start to feel a little bit more, I don't know, of confidence or assured of themselves. When you look back at what you did, how was it that it came to that, and could it have happened sooner, or was it where you were at that? Because this was the first time I think a lot of fans saw you in that way, and kind of emotional and standing up in a public way that they hadn't seen before. Can you kind of explain how maybe you kind of developed to get to that point, please?
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, just because you don't see something doesn't necessarily mean that's not there. I frankly don't think I've really changed a lot over the course of my time here. So, yeah. Yeah, I think it was just the way the circumstances played. But I think if that had happened 6 months before, my reaction would have been the same, and I would have gone about it very similarly, or even a year before. I think whether you're a rookie or in your second year, I don't, just because you're a rookie doesn't mean that that's okay, in my opinion. So, I think that when you get to this point, yes, you might have a stripe on the back of your car, but I mean, you're here for a reason, and you have the opportunity because you know how to race, and that you've done a lot of racing to this point. So you might have the yellow stripe, but man, there's a lot of experience that you have when you get to this point, and I think some people forget that sometimes.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chase, and good luck this weekend.
Thanks.